We got some people coming to testify. My name is Sharon Tyus. I am not the chair of this committee. I am the vice chair. Our chair is sick, and therefore I am chairing the committee. Madam Clerk, we're going to call this committee to order, and would you please call the roll?
Alderwoman Tyus.
Present.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Gunther.
He's excused because he said he wasn't going to be here.
Noted. Alderman Gunther.
Present.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Present.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Present.
Alderman Narayan.
Present.
Chairman Moore. 5 present. You have quorum.
This has been ongoing for a long time. It's taken a lot of patience. We're trying to move this forward. Everybody takes this process seriously. I want you to know we take this serious. There are a lot of strong opinions about who should represent us in this process, and so it's gotten bogged down sometimes. I don't think from anybody having any bad will. I think it's that everybody wants to see the most diverse, inclusive group of people that we can have so that all parts of St. Louis feel like that they're part of this, and if that we come out with something that is a good suggestion of how we can work together with the county, that we have it from all segments of society, as many diverse people, females, males, LGBT, black, white, Hispanic, all things we want as much as possible to include. If we could, we'd have one of each. We can't do that. But I want to thank the members of this committee and other people that we've been working with, because they have really fought for this to be an inclusive process. I don't think, I've been at the board since 1991, and this is the first time I've ever seen such interest in a committee and people so committed to inclusion. And I think that is a great thing, and I want to thank everybody, and I want to thank the citizens who are willing to participate with this. Right now we have the whole subject of the Board of Freeholders has been tabled. Before we can do anything, we have to have 5 votes that we move to untable it, so that we then will go into interviewing people that are here. We have a couple of the people here that are going to interview. Then another person, she's a grandmother, so she's taking care of her granddaughter, and then she will be here. We have 3 people, I think, that we are interviewing. The 4th person we weren't able to get in contact with. We're going to probably have to continue this meeting until we interview all the people. The first thing I would do is entertain a motion that we take okay, that's right. I forgot the minutes. I'm sorry. Thank you. Before we get to that, we're going to approve the minutes from November 21st, 2019. I would like for the committee to look at the minutes for a few minutes, and then I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of November 21st, 2019, if appropriate.
I would like to move that we approve the minutes from November 21st, right?
2019.
2019. Second.
There's been a motion, and then there's been a second. Madam Clerk, if you would call the roll, please.
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd. Aye. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
Aye.
Chairman Moore. 5 aye votes.
By your vote, you've approved the minutes of the November 21st, 2019 committee meeting. Okay, we do not have any board bills for review or any resolutions, so we're back to the committee discussion on item number 1, which is the Board of Freeholders. As I said before, I would entertain a motion that we lift off the table the Board of Freeholders, and what we're going to do today is we're going to interview. That's all we're going to do until we get everybody that we're going to do, because we're going to do a slate, so we're going to interview. So I'd entertain a motion to take that off so that we can interview the people that are, take that matter off the table so we can interview the people that are here.
So moved. Second.
Previous roll.
Previous roll.
Okay, you have a motion, you have a second, you have previous roll. Any objection to previous roll? Okay, by your actions, we've lifted the freeholders off of the table, and we will then have the people who some of them are actual nominees, some of them are people that we wish to be nominees, and we are having an ongoing discussion with the mayor's office. We're getting real close. I know you people are impatient. I want you to know nobody's more impatient than me, because no one has spent more time on this than me. If you just knew the hours that I spent on this, you would know I'm very serious about this. And I do think sometimes good people differ, but I do think that this is a good group of people that we're talking to, and inclusion is always better. I'm going to ask the first person to come up would be Mr., and I won't say your name right, Gilberto? And come before us and say your last name so that I don't mispronounce it. And I'm going to be in trouble because I have Hispanic people, Mexican and Black in my family, so my cousin is going to be talking about me when I go home, okay? So would you say your name, please?
Good afternoon, Madam Vice Chair. My name is Gilberto, Gilberto Pinella, Pinela.
Okay, and we're going to swear people in, which people don't know that we can do. We need you to be as truthful with us as possible. This is a very friendly committee. We're happy to see you before us, okay?
Thank you.
And we thank you for taking the time. Would you raise your hand? Swear to tell the whole truth, and if you don't swear, you can say affirm. You swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to go by seniority and asking people if they have questions to ask you. So the most senior person here is Alderman Gunther.
Thank you, Gilberto. So we have a very short,
You might need to pull your-
we have a very short kind of application from you. So I guess I will just kind of ask for a little bit of background. I see that you're originally from Puerto Rico.
Yes, I thank you for the opportunity also, Alderman Gunther. I am originally born and raised in Puerto Rico. I came to New York when I was 18 and then moved to St. Louis 10 years later when I was 21. I've been here for close to 30 years now. I started with an accounting background, but then moved to do my dream, which was being on television and do television hosting. I got hired part-time to do the first television show in Spanish in the state of Missouri called Ahora San Luis back in 2001 with STL-TV now. And then it moved on to UPN and some other channels. I am currently the communications manager for Cortex Innovation Community, and very happy there. And we are doing a lot of great things for the city of St. Louis. So that's a short story. I have a master's degree in media communications from Western University, and I live in South St. Louis.
Very good. And so let's see, I'm just trying to do a little research here. So studied communications at Webster
Yes.
and St. Louis Community College. Okay. Also,
In St. Louis Community College with a broadcast.
I see you're also a veteran.
I'm also an Air Force veteran.
Very good.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much for being here and being a part of this process. I've followed your work for a while and highly respect what you do, so thank you.
Thank you.
And no further questions from me.
The next person is Alderwoman Pamela Boyd.
Okay, I do not have his application, but that's fine.
Okay. We just have, they didn't give us but a small part of it.
Yeah, I
Right.
was like, I don't have it. Thank you for coming, I appreciate it. And I guess the question I want to ask is, what impact do you think you could have by sitting on the board for the freeholders?
Okay, well, thank you for the opportunity, Alderwoman Boyd. What impact can I have? Number one, I will be a voice for the Latinx community here in St. Louis. This is one of the communities that are that's growing faster than many communities here in the city, and it's always underrepresented. So my interest and the impact that I can have is being a voice for the Latinx community, also representing or also being a voice for the LGBTQ community, as I am gay and I am very involved with organizations such as Promo. I'm involved with Doorways and other organizations that I can also voice their concerns to.
Okay, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Hello, thank you for coming. At this time, I don't have any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Alderman Narayan.
Thank you for coming today, Mr. Pinella. Before I ask you anything, I just wanted to thank Vice Chair Tyus for putting in a heck of a lot of time and energy into this behind the scenes. You've basically put this thing on your back and carried us to where we're at now, and I know that not everyone in the city sees kind of what's happening behind the curtains here, and so I do want to point out the fact that Alderwoman Tyus has really put in a lot of time and energy and expended political capital trying to make this happen, and even if everyone else doesn't necessarily see it, I definitely do, and I'd like to thank you for putting in that effort, so thank you.
Here, here.
And Mr. Pinella, thank you for coming before us here today. I've asked kind of the same few questions from every candidate who's appeared before us, so in that spirit, I'll just ask you those same questions. When in the past we've looked at the potential of changing the structure of government in the region, a few different ideas have kind of sprang forward, one being the city entering the county as a municipality. Back in the 60s, there was discussion of the county re-entering the city as some sort of municipality. In 1962, there was a plan for actually a borough system similar to New York. Have you given any thought, or do you have any ideas about what may be a good form of combined government, or any services that may be ripe for combination, even if they're kind of outside of the box, like maybe the borough system was in 62? Do you have any kind of ideas there?
Well, once again, thank you for the opportunity, Alderman Narayan. And what I like to do is I like to, first of all, see if there's a possibility of me being on the board, on the committee, and then explore what are the options that we present on the table. I do not want to assume or try to represent the interest, although I want to be a voice for the communities that I represent, like the Latinx community and even the foreign-born community and the LGBTQ. I like to first explore what options we have on the table, because I know that this is going to be a year-long process, and it's going to be a very long process that may not get to a point where we get to say, oh, we're going to be either a borough or you're going to be a municipality or anything like that. So my option would be that if the whole entire board decides that that's the focus, then I will be more, prepped to be able to inform and give my opinion on how I feel. So I hope that I'm answering that question.
Absolutely.
But I feel that it's premature for me to come over and say, well, this is my idea, as we have to see what the future holds.
Absolutely. No, I appreciate that. Politics is the art of the possible, and so it's that's well taken. It may be a premature question, certainly. So in the event that there was some sort of combining of the city and county, even just services, would you be interested in looking at the potential of combining schools, particularly with attention to the special schools, special needs schools and special needs students?
Yeah, definitely I would. especially their school system, yes. Because I think it's going to benefit the whole entire region. And it's going to definitely benefit the city, where we continue to contemplate closing schools because we don't have enough population or tax base to maintain them.
Okay, and then I think that I know the answer to this question already, but we have to create a record here. The city has protections for the LGBTQ community that the county does not have. In the event that we were to be looking at some sort of merger of the city and county, would you be committed to fighting to make sure that the LGBTQ community continues to share those protections that we have in the city currently?
So short answer will be yes. Long answer will be I will also consult and ask for the guidance of organizations such as Promo, which are continuously dealing with legislation and continuously dealing with issues that are involving protecting the lives of the LGBT people here in the whole entire state of Missouri. So short answer, yes, and then, we got to go dig deeper, and I will use the guidance of an organization such as Promo.
Thank you, and I have no further questions, Vice Chair.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any follow-up questions before I ask questions?
We know you explained it.
Actually, I'm going to try to keep this short again. I want to thank you for being here. I want to give thanks to the people, the young people from South St. Louis and the newer Alder people. They pressed to make sure that LGBT community was represented. They pressed, they held up. There's been a lot of pressure for us to just go ahead and pick somebody. Just going ahead and pick somebody is not a good idea. And if we don't learn that, we're going to find out the hard way when we have an election in a few months for president, okay? So, but they stood up. Then when the person that was originally nominated didn't work, they came up with your name. And I knew you from many years ago. So I want to just give praise to people because this committee has been great. They have been committed to this, and so they were not going to give in. So I'm glad to hear that you would represent a lot of different communities, not only the LGBT community, but the Hispanic community, and as you said, the foreign-born, because we have a big population of other people, Bosnians and everything else that are in this community. I remember, I've been here since '91, so I remember when I used to live in South St. Louis, Central Quarter, and North St. Louis, probably the only person on this board that's lived in all three communities. I can remember when I was going to law school in South St. Louis, as the Asians and other populations, Hispanics was coming in, there was some hesitation about it, but really the Asians have saved South Grand, okay? There were some people who had a lot of problems about that. There would not be a business community if it were not for the Asians and the things that they have done there. Hispanics have done a lot in South St. Louis. I'm just jealous because I want you to come to North St. Louis, but that's my own personal problem. How long have you lived in St. Louis, I think was the question I was going to ask again.
Over 29 years, close to 30 now.
So and have most of them been in South St. Louis?
In South City, yes.
So you're a South Sider now, huh? Okay, and I don't know much about what your style is. I'm trying to get a feel of your style so this board is going to be 9 people from the city, 9 people from the county, and 1 person that the governor which is going to appoint. And you, I understand, that's going to be our independent representative. So you're independent, not a Democrat or a Republican. So what is your style? Or tell me about you. So you're in a committee meeting with Sharon Tyus, whose style is, she knows what she wants and she goes for it, okay? But maybe you don't agree with Sharon Tyus. Tell me about how you would deal with me, especially if I was, sometimes I lean in and become the public defender and cross-exam. Don't even mean to do that, and sometimes I forget it. How do you deal with Sharon Tyus?
Well, I believe in team playing. I'm a team player. That's the only way you can communicate the message that out of Cortex Innovation Community, we have so many players involved in making that place such a great place for St. Louis. And I like to listen. I like to find out what is your opinion, what is your idea, your suggestion. And then if I have a different point of view, because I come from a different perception, and I'm always thinking whether it's what would a person who's foreign-born or a Latinx person or even an LGBTQ person would do in this situation, then I try to give you my opinion, but in a visual perspective. So you can see yourself in my shoes. And hopefully that helps, with collaborating with other people.
So are you okay sometimes to just agree to disagree? I've been married for 32 years. I've been with my spouse for 40-something years. We met in college. So sometimes we just have to walk to opposite ends of the house.
I am.
Are you okay to agree to disagree?
I am okay to agree to disagree. Yes.
Okay.
That is not an impediment.
Okay, and when you agree to disagree, can you still work with the person even if you find your own very different ends of the spectrum on things?
Yeah, I believe in compromise. I think that working together with other people, not everybody's going to see my opinion. I can give you an example. I find myself, I'm a member of many boards here in the city, and I'm, whether it's as a commissioner for the History Museum sub-district, or as a commissioner in the IDA board, I encounter, sometimes dissenting voices and people that have very strong opinions, and I come from the perspective of basically being the outsider. As long that I think that my voice was heard and there is some kind of compromise that I can see in the horizon, that we can move forward together, I don't have a problem. I'm not going to hold a grudge. I don't have time for that. And I don't have time to be negative or being in getting into fights just for my own agenda or my own, reputation or whatever. So basically, yes, I can compromise. I am somebody that will work with the team. That's why I'm in so many boards. And it's all about thinking what St. Louis in the future will look like, what this region will be, whether it's a region that embraces new people coming in, new Americans coming in, or are we going to stay back and stay in our box?
Okay, and so one of the things I keep hearing is about the city going into the county. And so I'm not originally from St. Louis, but I've lived here since 1978. And I've been in North St. Louis since 1986, so I feel like that I'm a vocal proponent of North St. Louis. I didn't think I would ever live there, but I've been there, and I propose that it is a great place to live. But I also get very offended about people's view of the city, as though, first of all, nobody ever says I'm from St. Louis County. They don't say I'm from Chesterfield, and people don't know where you are. They say I'm from the St. Louis, okay?
Yes.
So, I want to know, will you defend that our city is a vibrant place to live in? It's not poor city of St. Louis. We need you, county, to come and rescue us. Yes, we want to work together, but I'm going to tell you, they had the first Freeholders meeting at the Board of Aldermen, the chambers. I came and showed up to tell them, I'm not really looking to merge the city into St. Louis, okay? I don't like it when people talk about minorities, Hispanics, black, that we become a melting pot. No, we're stew. We keep our individualism and we work together, but I don't want you to be me, and I don't want to be white, okay? I am who I am, and so I like stew. That's a good thing. You get to taste different taste and different, and that's what I think the city should be. So are you committed to making sure that the city is represented not in a way that people feeling sorry for us, or that we automatically should merge into the city, and that making sure that they understand how important the city is by itself, standing alone?
Yes, definitely. But that goes back into your question about how do I feel, whether it should be a borough or something like that. South St. Louis has been my home for close to 30 years now. I own a house, so I'm very, very committed to St. Louis. That's why my commitment goes deep into many different organizations and associations. I am very pro-city. I'm somebody that will be a voice, representing my communities in a way that I can say, because of my different communities, we are making the city stronger. And this city has a lot to offer. So I'm very proud of being in South City. I'm very proud of being a non-native St. Louisan, right? And I will do my best to make sure that, if we come to an agreement, and if that is the focus of the board, particularly focus on that merger, then, seeing the ways that we can maintain our integrity and we can make sure that people recognize that, when you fly, when you go all over the world, you don't say you're from St. Charles, you say you're from St. Louis.
That's right. That's
So-
exactly right.
Hope that answered your question.
Okay. And let's see, you said you're on a number of organizations. Do you see any of the organizations you are currently on? Would there be any kind of conflict with you being a member of the Board of Freeholders that you can foresee?
Well, the time commitment may be a conflict, but then I'll have to navigate through that. And I can't always put on hold my commitment to the organizations. I like to, be guided in different situations. So there's particular organizations that I will not compromise on that one, like Promo, for example, will be one of them. But then if there's an organization that I can say, okay, I'm going to put this on hold for a year because of my commitment to the board, then that's what I'm going to do.
And I guess obviously you see how positive it is to have diversity, right?
Yes.
I don't even ask that question. We asked it earlier because we didn't have a diverse board. It was no people that were it was one person north of Page, and that was a big deal for us, because the majority of the African-American community lives north of Page. So that was something, but sometimes in pushing for one thing, like I said, you might ignore something else. In order for us to get the north of Page, the LGBT community was left out, and again, so you bring that aspect, not that you're just a check mark, but that I'm glad that you bring that. Is there anything that we haven't asked about you that you want us to know about you, that perhaps we didn't ask you?
Not at this point in time. If we have an opportunity if I have an opportunity to be in front of you again, I will definitely come more prepared with some questions. I'm following what's going on. So the only comment that I will have, instead of having a question, will be the comment that, I'm committed to this process. I'm committed to being a board member if I have to be, if I am selected. And I believe in St. Louis. I'm a St. Louis maid. So I came, stayed, and made it here. So I believe very strongly that this will be very important and very good for the entire region as we move forward with this process. And the part of including marginalized or underrepresented communities like the Latinx community, the foreign-born, and the LGBTQ community, to me, is very important. So I am going to be a voice for that as much as I can.
Okay. And another question. So do you see any conflict with your current employment with the Cortex with being on the Board of Freeholders?
Well, we just changed. We're getting a new CEO, so I will have to have a conversation with him about that.
Okay. I don't have any further questions. Is there anyone else that has any questions? Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
If you're welcome to stay. If you have to go someplace, you can go over to the board and get your parking validated too, okay?
Okay.
All right,
Thank
so
you
you
so
know where it
much.
is. Okay, thank you.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next person we have is Ms. Velma Bailey, who is a former alderperson from the 19th Ward. actually served with me when I was a newbie, taught me a lot about politics. I came here as a lawyer, but didn't know anything about politics. She was one of my mentors, along with Irv Clay, Velma, and Irv and Bertha Mitchell and Freeman Bosley and some others, Marty Abusi. So I had a good mix of people who have been involved in politics. Velma's father has been involved with the city and recreation for a long time. I would present to you Velma Bailey and ask you, whoever would have thought that all these many years I would be swearing you in, okay? Velma, do you swear to tell the whole truth or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you very much. Okay, we don't have anything before you for Velma because Velma is one of the people that we proposed that we would like to see on the committee. We don't have her application or anything. That there has not been an agreement, but in an effort to try to push forward, we're bringing in people that that we want to see on the committee so we can try to get this thing done, okay? So there's nothing before you, but we will get you some more stuff as needed. But I thought that this committee was strong enough that we could ask questions with, that we pretty much have our questions down pat, that we could ask questions. If you don't want to do that, you let me know. But we're going to start with Alderman Gunther.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Hello, Ms. Bailey. Good afternoon, yeah. Since we do not have your actual application, I'm going to just kind of go through some of the basics of the application.
Excuse me for a minute. Do you want her to tell us a little bit about herself before you ask questions? Would that be better?
Absolutely, yeah.
Why don't you tell us about you first, and then we'll ask you questions.
Well, thank you very much, Chairman Tyus and members of
Chairwoman, thank you very much.
Chairman Tyus and members of the committee. That was a long-standing conversation we had for how many years? I'm excited about being here this afternoon, and I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I'd like to applaud you for the efforts that you put in. Having served as an alderwoman in the city of St. Louis, I can appreciate what you're doing, and the process of having people included in city government at the grassroots level is very important, especially as we're changing some of the issues that are facing our citizens in terms of reducing the size of the Board of Aldermen and future development. A little bit about myself. I am a lifelong resident of the city of St. Louis. I actually originated from an area around Skinker and Page, and my family was relocated to where we are now for urban renewal. So our family is pretty entrenched in that, as I now presently live in the area where the NGA is locating. I went to St. Louis University and got my undergraduate degree. I attended Webster University and have a master's degree. In addition to that, I went to Lindenwood University and have hours that's allowed me to be certified to have a certificate as a principal in the state of Missouri. I've served as a teacher for 28 years in the St. Louis Public School District. I did some administrative work during that tenure. In addition to that, I've served on several committees and in organizations in the city. I guess one of the things that you probably would recognize is I was the president of the Federation of Block Units, which is an auxiliary of the Urban League of Metropolitan St. Louis. I was also president of class number 10 for the Citizens Academy for the St. Louis Metropolitan Police Department. I served as president of my local organization, my sorority, Sigma Gamma Rho. Also, I've been on my parish council at St. Teresa and Bridget Roman Catholic Church. And prior to that educational experience I got in higher ed, I was a student in the St. Louis Public School District. And sometimes it brings back a lot of agony because every other year, the block that I was on was chosen to go to a different school to get bused. So many of the children in my neighborhood, as we grew up, we didn't have any long-standing roots with people in our community because one side of the street was bused to one school and the other side of the street was bused to another school. So your question about education has a real place that for me and for the children that in the community where I live, and it's very sensitive. But since my tenure in the St. Louis Public School District, I have retired. And 2 years before my retirement, God blessed me to be able to establish a summer day camp in Fairground Park. And we started that camp because one of the kids in our neighborhood got murdered getting off his school bus. And some of us got together in our little Margaret Mead group, and we started volunteering. Our first act was to have a 3-week back-to-school safety camp and help the kids with stranger danger, anti-bullying strategies, and also to be aware of gun violence. Well, little did we know that 9 years later, here we are, still volunteering, bringing our community together, having more than 87 kids at times at our summer day camp. And we started out with a couple of partners, the city Department of Parks and then Recreation, and now we've been able to gain 50 partners in our community to provide no-cost services to our children at our camp from 8 o'clock to 4. And you know, our park is located in one of the zip codes with the highest incidences of some of the most violent crime. Our kids are exceptionally challenged with transportation to be able to get to places, to get outside of our community. And all of our kids at our camp qualify for free and reduced lunch services when they're in school, which means when they're out of school, 6 out of those 7 of those children do not have access to nutritious meals, and we're able to provide that. So that's a little bit about me and my interest in seeing my city work.
Very good. So you say you're currently living around the NGA site, so you're a 3rd Ward resident?
Yes, I am.
Okay. And because this has been brought up at other hearings, have you had conversations with Alderman Bosley about possibly being on this board?
Not specifically about being on this board, but I know Alderman Bosley would support me doing anything that would better the city of St. Louis and the 3rd Ward.
Wonderful.
Can I answer? I did talk to him directly, because I would never bring her up without talking to the alderman.
I knew you'd talk.
Okay, but I just want to say he did agree to support her.
Wonderful. That's a huge hurdle. So, thanks. Then, obviously, Alderman Ryan had asked about the public education. Being a former school teacher, that is one of the things that when I get asked, you know, what do we want to see come out of this, the Board of Electors process, you know, for myself personally, I could say, you know, some sort of idea of how we can make our schools fair, instead of having people leave the city when they have kids to have to move to the county where they have a different school system. So can you give me, obviously education is one of them, but what might be like 1 or 2 of like the top priorities you think that we may be able to come to an agreement between the city and county to help us work better in the future, kind of collaborating, if you had like 1 or 2 ideas?
I don't know that I necessarily have something at this time that would bring the city and the county together in terms of public education.
Okay.
But I do think it's a topic that needs to be discussed, and it needs to be discussed seriously and thoroughly. But one of the things I do firmly believe is that the city and the county need to look at hours when kids are not in school.
Yeah.
Kids are out of school more than they're in school, and there's there are a lot of things that we can do to garner that time, and there are many resources. We've been able to get 50 partners to provide services in Fairground Park because of the cultural institutions and the businesses that are here that really want to see kids have a fair opportunity to develop, and a lot of that's available outside of school hours. So I think we could look more at that as opposed to the school system as it exists now. But the population in the city of St. Louis in terms of students in public education has not diminished. It's just shifted.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you very much for your willingness to possibly serve on this voyage that we're taking here. And that's the only questions I had for you. So thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Boyd. No questions. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Are you on any other boards? Or can you name the other boards that you are on?
Boards in terms of serving in the city of St. Louis with organizations, I'm not on any at this moment.
Okay. So what motivates you to want to be on this board?
Well, one of the things that interested me was that there was a a concerted effort from this committee to get people to represent all sections of the city. And for me, many times, the north side of the city has been left out. When you talk about organizing and distributing resources for the city, and I really feel, having lived on the same block for the last 51 years, actually, I grew up on the block and I purchased a home on that block, having worked in many organizations that are in North City and in my community, having served as an alderwoman in the city, having served on the HUD's committee, on Ways and Means, and the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee. I really feel that the voice that I can bring to this process can help reach some of the grassroots people who've been disenfranchised, who've been disheartened at the least, to be able to have their voice heard. And I think there are some processes that can be put in place that will give them that voice and build a trust so that we can build up a stronger electorate and get people involved. And one of the things, when I was at the Board of Aldermen, I introduced having an assistant for members of the board. And I was totally crucified and hung on the tree. And somehow the administration took that idea, and then they created the Neighborhood Stabilization Office. Another thing that I introduced was very simple, was that when I come to my office, I like to have a computer at my desk that I don't have to bring from my home. That whole process got into, I was trying to take government money and use it for personal use, and it became a big political football, just to have a way to communicate and to be able to access your mail and to be able to communicate with your secretary when you're not in office, in your office, physical office. And there's some other things, if you'd like for me to share, that I think would be a great benefit to this organization, because you guys have worked so hard and you do so much. When you have the Board of Aldermen meetings broadcast, one of the things is there's no opportunity for people to have any feedback. And there could be some portholes created so that aldermen can get responses directly from their constituents electronically, and then you can give them feedback based on what they've seen and the questions that they ask, and it can be done electronically, and it's not going to be a large cost. And it'll be something that's really doable and can be done in a short period of time. Another thing that I really feel like is that there should be some rewards. I don't know if all of you followed, at one time the people were going all over the city looking for these trinkets or different places. Well, when people call in and give feedback, there could be resources, some kind of reward tokens or points that could be given to them. And it seems like some of the shopping institutions, they're willing to give 20% off, 10% off, or some kind of incentive for people to be able to shop in their store, because they're going to get what the benefits that they want to get, but also to get people to participate in a way that they are accustomed to and that they've been trained and can learn to participate. And I think it would really be helpful. And I have several other things that I think that would really be something that could help the grassroots person get involved, where they feel like, hey, somebody's listening to me, and you can get back to them and let them know that you've heard from them.
Okay, thank you so very much. I have no further questions.
Okay. Alderman Ryan.
Thank you. And thank you for coming here before us, Ms. Bailey. Before I get into kind of the same questions that I've asked everyone, since I don't have an application from you in front of me, I do want to just ask a couple of questions that would be answered on that. So you mentioned that you have several degrees. What are those degrees in?
My undergrad degree from St. Louis University is in communication disorders. My master's degree is in early childhood education. And then the certification that I had from Lindenwood was from educational administration.
Okay, thank you. And then, just because it matters so much on the math based on the law on the Board of Freeholders, and forgive my ignorance on this, because I probably should know since you were a former alderwoman here, but what political party are you a member of?
Democrat.
Okay. I had assumed based on your testimony, but I want to make sure that we get that right. So Then, going into the same questions that I've asked everyone, do you have any preference or idea on what you think may be A, politically feasible, and B, a good idea when it comes to the form of any combined government or combined services, whether it be the city folding into the county folding into the city? As I mentioned earlier, in 1962, there was a lot of talk about a borough system. Is there any form of merger that you think is a good idea, or any services that you think are ripe for a combination?
Well, I'd have to be open and really listening to something that would convince me that a merger was something that we needed to do between the city and county governments. So I'm going to be attentive, if appointed, to make sure that I listen for that. But it's going to have to be really loud, really clear, and really distinct. Okay? One of the things that I think that we can talk about are accommodations for parks, because the parks in North St. Louis are getting the absolute bottom run of whatever the resources are, and it's very difficult, even with, we've taken back a part of our community in Fairground Park where some of the people in that neighborhood didn't even want to have their children come there because of the crime there. And we've been there 9 years, and we've been standing strong, and we believe that that's something that needs to happen. But there are other amenities that need to happen in that park. The bridge is caving in. We were nature walking, and I actually went into some kind of sinkhole up to my knee in Fairground Park. The trees are falling. If it starts raining in that park because we don't have a shelter in Fairground, then tree limbs are falling, and we have to get the kids somewhere for safety. There are lots of things that we can do with parks, and then there can be some partnerships where there can be groups of children in the county and the city who exchange services in parks, and then kind of do some discussions and talk about what could be needed and how they can provide resources. One of the things that helped Carter Carburetor move was because the Boys and Girls Club had young people engaged in the conversation about city government and remediating all the problems that were happening there. So I think that's something we can do. I think we can work on something with the jail system and try to provide some kind of resources that are common to be able to resolve issues that affect those things. I also think some of the social service issues can be addressed. One of the things that's my pet peeve is that when school starts every year, that there are children that are excluded from school because they haven't had their shots. And you go from the end of school to the beginning of school, and all summer long, 2 health departments can't figure out how to get kids shots and a physical so they can start school on the first day, be their first day every day. Well, they're already sabotaged because they don't have some of the services that many of the children qualify for that the city provides and the county provide anyway. So I think we can look at some of those things. And then I think we can look at budgets. Why does Fairground Park percentage have a lower budget, percentage-wise, than Forest Park? And every time I get my taxes to pay them, I'm like, big X no. I'm not going to tell you that. But anyway, I think every park should have an opportunity. If I live in Fairground Park neighborhood, I should have an opportunity to check off if I want some of my taxes to go to Fairground Park.
All right. I can appreciate that, certainly. And as Alderman Gunther pointed out, you have quite an extensive level of experience when it comes to education. Do you, in the event that there was some sort of combination of governments or services, would you be committed to arguing for the idea that there should be some sort of combination of educational resources, schools, particularly paying attention to special needs students and the special school districts?
Well, having been in that system, having students with special needs has a whole gamut of discussion that could go on, because there are also kids, usually when people talk about special education services, they talk about kids at the lower end of the realm. They don't necessarily discuss the kids who are at the gifted range, and then kids who have a whole diverse way of learning that's not in the general education population. And in my opinion, as an educator, every child is special education. And a lot of times, the educational system promotes people teaching to the middle and trying to get that middle kid. But there are parents now who have homeschooling, and then there are parents also that are doing virtual schools. So I think some of those issues can be discussed, but in terms of mergers, those are some things that I'm really going to have to listen to. 'Cause
Understood.
For me, when we talk about merging, it's always been the lower income and blacks who get the lower end of resources whenever you talk about merging. And, you know, I want to say I'm very proud of my educational background. When I grew up, you had to be 10 times as better to get 50% as much. So I'm a high achiever, and I'm hoping to bring that kind of energy and the ability to learn to this committee, to the board, freeholders.
I certainly appreciate that. And then lastly, in the city here, we have protections for the LGBTQ community that the county does not have. In the event that there was some sort of merger of governmental entities, would you be committed to fighting to ensure that the city's LGBTQ community continue to have those protections in place?
I don't have a problem with supporting that, and I think that, in my personal opinion, that's something that should be done regardless to whether or not it goes forth with the Board of Freeholders or not. The safety and the enhancement of every citizen in this community should be protected, and I really feel that that should be, for me, a no-brainer.
Thank you. I have nothing further.
Okay, before I ask questions, Alderwoman Ingracia from the 6th Ward is not on our committee, but has some questions she'd like to ask.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for taking time with us today. I appreciate it. I'm curious if you had an opportunity to read or know about the Ford through Ferguson Commission report, For the Sake of All, our Equity Indicators report here in the city of St. Louis, and how that might influence the work that you would do on the Board of Electors.
I have had a chance to review the Ferguson report and have been in some focused discussion groups with St. Margaret of Scotland Church that they organized around the Ferguson Commission and For the Sake of All. And the process that they went through, I thought was very interesting, to be able to come up with a series of recommendations that can be implemented. But I've been at the Board of Aldermen in the city of St. Louis, and, you know, the Metropolitan Sewer District, and then the alphabet soups over at SLDC, and all of those agencies, they've, in my opinion, created, at points and times, these quasi-governmental institutions whose decisions often carry the weight of law, which, just in my opinion, circumvent the process of having elected officials, members of a Board of Aldermen, and a Board of E&A. So I would like to be clear at this point that it is my understanding that the Board of Freeholders is meeting to get information from the citizens to present, and it will go to the places where the established legislative process can deal with them.
Right, okay, I appreciate that. I guess what I was asking is, because I think of reports like that identify over and over again the racial inequities, both in the city of St. Louis and the county, and were citizen-led, grassroots on the part of the Ferguson Commission report, and it had some pretty troubling health disparity data released For the Sake of All, and then also we scored fairly lowly in a wide variety of racial equity indicators in our baseline report. But we haven't done a lot to move things that we know forward here at the legislature. We have some, but not all. And so I was just curious if you would find value, even though you're not a legislator, in moving those conversations forward in terms of what an equitable region looks like.
I am very interested in moving conversations forward.
Any specific type of conversations?
The ones that you discussed in
Okay.
reference to getting, if the Board of Freeholders comes up with some suggestions to help move them forward. But also, there's some things, like you said, they're in the Ferguson Commission that could be beneficial. But the one thing I personally have a concern with is the process where there's not a unified effort and that there's an established hierarchy that should be worked with to be able to move processes.
Okay, thank you. And my last question is, do you have an opinion on when the year started or if it hasn't started in terms of the amount of time that the Board of Freeholders has to do their work?
Well, from my understanding and what I've read, they had a meeting in November, and then there was supposed to be 1 year. So I'm assuming that in November of this year will be the established time that they're going to meet.
Okay, so it's your understanding if you get sworn in, say, next week or the week after, you would only have between then and November of 2020?
That's my understanding.
Okay, all right. That's all, thank you.
Before I ask questions, did anyone else have any follow-ups? Okay. Alderwoman Bailey. I don't even know, it's hard for me to ask questions because I already know so much. I don't know, this is somebody from City Hall, they'll have to call back. I know so much about you. I could really give a statement about how organized she is. She is understating her ability to get things done, her organization. When I came as was a new alderperson, I was in awe of Velma Bailey, okay? People talk about Sharon Tides, I was in awe of her. I would not know anything about city government. When you knew you need people that teach you, Velma knew it. I want to talk a little bit about what you said about the parks, because your father was always involved in the parks. My father-in-law was involved in the parks. And during the time that we grew up, even though I didn't grow up here in St. Louis, parks were staffed with people, so that when the students went there, they felt safe, they had crafts to do, there was something to do in the parks during the year. And mostly, we had teachers who didn't work during the year. Didn't work during the summer. They were the people who were the arts and crafts and things like that. Is that something you maybe could see us working together with the county? Because right now, the county, you can't use their parks. If you want to have a family reunion or whatever, you have to actually get someone in your family who lives out in the county or someone in the county, because you can't use their parks for anything like that. But all our parks are open to everybody. So if we're going to talk about things that we can do you see, coming from your parks background, us maybe putting together a parks organization so that the kids could go to wherever they need in their neighborhood, and piggybacking on what you said about the funds for Forest Park rather than for other parks. We all know that when you and I were elected, and then thereafter we got a mayor who didn't quite understand what he was doing when he passed a bill. I actually have the printout of what has happened with the tax monies going to Forest Park. Has got about almost $50 million back since then. The South Side parks have got about $18 or $20 million, and the two North Side parks have only got about, I think, I'm going to say this, maybe $5-7 million. And that's split between Fairground and O'Fallon, which is not nearly enough. So when you see all the great things going on in Forest Park, it's because the formula that was written, that was passed, and people didn't understand what they were doing, made it very unfair. They based it on acreage instead of basing it on, we're going to give this amount to North St. Louis, this to South St. Louis, and this to the Forest Park. We would have had a lot more money in our neighborhoods to fix up parks. So would you advocate us having some kind of combination parks district, or is it more that you just want to see us fix up the parks in our own neighborhoods?
I'd like to see us, first of all, fix up the parks in our own neighborhood, because it's hard to invite somebody to something, especially when they have better resources. And then, really, we have 4-year-olds at our camp. And to have those kids out there, and we don't know if limbs are going to fall from trees, the swimming pool broke a couple of times, and it's just a lot. But I would like to see that done first, or in conjunction with us having some kind of regional approach to parks. But not only for the city and county, but the state of Missouri has parks, and the National Park Service can provide resources. If we can get all those agencies together, we can talk about some real opportunities for our kids. Because for no cost, our kids are already partnering with the Missouri State Parks. They go kayaking, canoeing, they go ecosystem exploring out in Merrimack State Parks. Our kids have been to almost, I'm going to say 7 of the state parks. Then they have, we have camping overnight. The kids learn how to set up tents. They know how to, most of our kids that started out with us when they were 4. They know how to start a fire with a flint. They can put up their own tent. They can foil pack food. They can go fishing. And we're not able to keep the fish that we catch, but they know the process of how to maintain their lifestyle if they had to live without anything. We have STEM classes at the Science Center that we don't pay anything for, so our kids go to 4 STEM classes. They learn about sustainable energy, aerospace, agri-science. So a lot of our kids can grow food, and they know about hydroponics, so they know how to be able to have fish and grow food and water. And they know how the process of having the fish being fed by the vegetation being fed by the fish waste. So they know, they've learned a lot of things. And we have, like the Magic House, the History Museum. Our kids were actually trained by staff at the History Museum at no cost to us on how to develop protests, how to make protest signs, the history behind protesting. And our kids, believe it or not, sometimes have behavior challenges. So the History Museum wanted us there so badly that they doubled up on the volunteer staff, so it's no cost to them. And the art museum was so intrigued by the kids wanting to be there, and when they get there, they're engaged, that we have missed public transportation a couple of times and our schedule was thrown off. So they started sending a bus for us, because they want the kids there. There are lots of opportunities that could be of no cost. It just requires organizing and collaborating with services where our kids can get a lot of resources. And we also go biking on the Katy Trail, and the Missouri State Parks, they have funding in their budget. They actually provide the bikes for us. We go out to the parks, and then they rent bikes for our kids. So they're like, some of our kids, with the resources we have in the summer, they have a whole change in their attitude about what's available to them and how they should be able to access resources, because they're treated as first-class citizens by a lot of the cultural institutions in this community, and we're very thankful for it.
And so all of these things that you just described, because many of them I don't know about, okay? I'm just like, my mouth is wide open. I know you and I have talked the other day. How did you find out about these things?
Well, you know, first of all, I've lived in the city all my life, and my dad worked in city recreation, so a lot of our services were through city parks. There was the system of the YMCA if you had money, then there was the Boys and Girls Club, and then there was the grassroots people who just came from the community into the recreation centers. And when that boy got murdered getting off his bus, I thought the very foundation of democracy, as far as I knew, had been shaken. How can you not go to school and feel safe? I mean, that is something that I've never thought would happen in my lifetime. So as we started organized trying to find things for the kids, I thought, well, we're not going to try to find salaries first, because anybody can work for a salary. The things that I do when I volunteer, those are the things that mean the most to me, because I don't have to do them. I have to work, I have to have money to pay my bills, but I don't have to volunteer. So some of the experiences I had when City Rec, when there were a group, and I'm going to venture out here and say benevolent Republicans in the city, there were lots of resources in this community. When I lived on the block where I live, 1 block from Sportsman's Park before it moved. When they built the Boys and Girls Club there, when the astronauts came to St. Louis, they were at the Boys and Girls Club. We had ringside seats at the Chase. The wrestlers would fall out of the ring across our feet. I mean, when Bob Burns, I like to mention his name, he used to get the kids, all the children, tickets. And we would go as a group, and we got the press box at the arena and at places, and we saw the ice capades. I mean, there was something we were doing 2 or 3 times a month on the weekends, going out and exploring this community. And what's happened to it needs to be turned around, and I'm willing to volunteer to do part of it. But there are so many resources that are out there that are free. You know, who would have thought that the Magic House would be in Fairground Park with a bunch of laptops teaching nutrition, fitness, and health services to children at no cost to us?
Okay, so you're a wonderful organizer, a great teacher, but you were a city alderperson for a number of years, okay? And so let's talk about one of the things that I actually called you and asked you, just like I did Joanne, because I want some people on this Board of Freeholders that I believe that know about the city, know if somebody comes toward us that makes an offer that's a good thing, that would be a good fit for the city to enhance us, or some things, again, I don't like people who demean the city and think that we are coming to beg from something. We bring a lot of great things. So, and speaking about city services and things like that, you did sit on Ways, and I think when I first got here, you sat on HUDs, and I know you sat on Ways and Means, you sat on Intergovernmental Affairs. I know you were a very active alderperson. Tell me about, do you think that the experience you had while you were here, and I guess it was 5 years, was it?
I was here 6
6
years.
years, okay.
2 years of an unexpired term and then
Right.
4 years of a term.
Right. So the 6 years you were here, do you think that enhanced your ability to know about city services, anything that we might be able to work together? I agree with you. People always talk about working together as something good. I know MSD used to be the St. Louis City sewer district, okay? I don't necessarily think it's been a good idea to combine. Everybody pushed integration and busing. When I look at all the vacant schools in our community, that's not been a great idea, especially when you look at education. Some people have gotten a pretty good education, but a lot of them haven't. The whole charter school thing, oh, let's have charter schools that don't have to follow the rules. But when we look at the charter schools, they're not doing, most of them not doing any better than the public schools, except for they don't have to fit up under the same requirements as public schools. So I guess my question to you, because I'm going on, is that does your experience as an alderperson, do you think that makes you in a better position to be able to vet whatever suggestions this committee of 19 will come up with, and be able to have some insider input of why ideas that may come forth may be a good idea or a bad idea?
I think it certainly gives me a wealth of experience to realize that there are things that need a lot of discussion and some more research before they're put forth. And one of the things that was really, I think, harmful to the city was when they combined the police stations and providing services in those 3 districts, as opposed to when we had the 9 police areas. So I think there are things like that, closing recreation centers and providing contracts for people. We used to have fun skating at Steinberg, you know, roller skating, and there was a great outreach for people. But some of the things like that, when you start looking at subcontracting out or giving people opportunities to provide service with public funds, but they get a private reward for it, really is something that I think that we should look at. I'm interested in going slow, however long the process is. We don't have to hurry up to undo a bunch of stuff that we did when we could have waited and got them in place at the time when they would be of service to the community, as opposed to being detractors like they are now.
Okay, and there's been some suggestions by the person who's now leaving, who was the county police chief, that he suggested that he would take over our police department, which made very apprehensive because he and the former county executive, who is now, I think, in prison, actually wrote letters of support for someone who had committed a crime and then blown up somebody's house, and then he thought that he should take over our police department, which we just got back. So can you give me your thoughts about having our police department taken over by, it won't be him anymore because he's retiring, but just in general, having our police be subservient maybe to the county police, is that something that you think is a good idea, or do you have any idea on that right now?
My initial thought about the police departments merging is that it would be something similar, like you said, to the school district. And I really think that's such a personable service that links our citizens to being, to government and to everything that they do here. I just think that at this point, there needs to be a lot of discussion about it. There's nothing initial. I don't think that's something that we can hurry in the next few years to have a lot of discussion about merging the city and the county police departments. And I really hope that if there is some way to rescind or retract residency requirements for police officers and any other city employees, that it ought to be looked at seriously, because if I'm going to drink from this trough, I want to put some water in it. I don't want to take everything out of it. And if it's safe enough for me, then I think that it should be safe enough for you.
I call it the benefits burden test. If you've been married for a long time, there are a lot of good benefits to being married, but there are some burdens too. You don't get to have all the benefits without the burdens. I tell the police that all the time. I am adamantly opposed to the police moving out the city, and I think it sends a very bad message of going up to Jefferson City and going around the Board of Aldermen, so I concur. Are there any follow-up questions? If none, thank you so much. I appreciate it. We do validate. Welcome to stay and listen to everyone. If you have to go, you can go. I know you know where the room is. Go get your parking validated. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, and I'd like to thank all of you for your time this afternoon. I've really got a chance to learn a lot more about the Board of Freeholders process, and I think that the process is in good hands.
Thank you. Okay. Do we need to take a few minutes break, or is everybody okay? Can we just continue?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, so the next person we have is Mrs. Dwindlin Evans, who is a 4th Ward resident and the committee woman of the 4th Ward. We're going to swear you in.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
Okay.
If you raise your right hand, do you swear or affirm to tell the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Thank you. State your name for the record. Put your hand down. Another one of my friends.
My name is Dwindlin Evans, but most people call me Dwyn. And is there anything else you told me to just...
So if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, we should have something on you, because you have... Okay, but since we let Velma, why don't you just tell us a little about anything you want us to know about you?
Okay. As I said, my name is Dwindlin Evans. People call me Dwyn. And I am presently the committee woman of the 4th Ward under the auspices of the Honorable Alderman Samuel L. Moore. I know that most adults will stop listening to a presentation within the first 10 minutes if they aren't convinced that there is something in it for them. And with that in mind, I'm going to be brief and to the point as to why I am applying for the freeholders position. Let me give you a little bit of background as to where I grew up. I've been a lifelong resident of the St. Louis area and am a proud product of the St. Louis public school system. Starting with Bates Elementary until the tornado of '59 damaged that building, I then had to move east to attend Carr School, then Franklin School, and then I moved back west to attend Ford Elementary. Graduated 8th grade to attend O'Fallon Technical High School for 3 years, and my last year as a co-op of O'Fallon/Soldan. From there, I attended, at the time, it was called Harris Teachers College, which is now Harris Stowe State University. Now, I had to work at White Castle restaurant to pay my tuition because in a household of 5 other siblings and only one breadwinner, they couldn't afford to pay for my tuition. This led to an extensive career in the field of education, 34 years to be exact. 2 years in the city, 32 years in Normandy School District. From 5th grade, I taught 5th grade to a math specialist to an instructional specialist. I obtained a Master's of Arts in Educational Administration from Lindenwood University. Now, there were various co-curricular involvement, such as Math Curriculum Committee, I was on that. I was on the MAP Training Committee. I was also a Mentor-Mentee Committee co-chair, Professional Development Committee representative. I was a Professional Development Committee chairperson. I also attended PPP, which stood for Practical Parenting Partnership. Professional presentations, I was a presenter for investigations, mathematical workshops, and also Normandy School District staff development. Other affiliations that I have, National Education Association, a member, Missouri National Educators Association, a member, Delta Sigma Theta Sorority, a member, Community Involvement and Normandy's Aspiring Leaders Program. Okay, so after becoming involved with community activities, or should I say after retiring, I became involved with community activities, such as the Block Unit Chair, Committee Woman of the 4th Ward, where 4th Ward meetings are held monthly to inform and empower our constituents by having various service providers attend our meetings, as well as helpful contacts for the city services in the 4th Ward. These are some of the handouts, helpful contacts for city services in the 4th Ward that I give my constituents, because it's important that we empower the constituents in our community. Let them know what's going on. Let them know of the immediate service providers that we have in the city of St. Louis. So these are some of the information that I provide at my 4th Ward meetings. And again, like I said, it's held once a month, 4th Saturday of the month in Ward 4. We have monthly agendas of people that we have coming to our ward meetings, and also an update as to what the alderman is doing in our ward. And this is to let them know that sometimes when Alderman Moore is not there, he is still on the job. And that's it.
All righty. Then
This is my book of 4th Ward info. So I just bought it. It just has a lot of information in there.
The teacher in you, I appreciate it. I represent a lot of teachers in my ward, okay? Then, if you're finished, we're going to have questions, starting with Alderman Gunther.
Thank you, Ms. Chairwoman. Hello, how you doing, Ms. Evans?
Hi.
So, Fourth Ward Committee woman, how long have you been Fourth Ward Committee woman? It's got to take a long time to make that.
No, I still consider myself a newbie,
Okay.
but 16, since 2016.
2016, okay. Okay. And I really enjoy the fact that we have a lot of teachers coming that have been possible appointments for this board. So because we've asked everyone, can you talk a little bit about how you think that maybe our school systems might be able to benefit from a city-county cooperation?
How our school systems may benefit from
City and county working together on education?
and county working together. Well, if they, I'm going to put it this way. I don't know if they have our school's interest at best at heart, because, and I may have been given some misinformation, but it was like they wanted to join in with us, but not do anything about our schools. And at this point, they have dismantled so many of our public schools. I'm talking about our city has dismantled so many of our schools in our city that it's deplorable. They wanted to close down another school, Farragut, possibly Hickey. These are all Fourth Ward schools. Farragut School is one of the best-kept secrets that we have in the city of St. Louis. When they told Alderman Moore that they wanted to close down Farragut, I went along with him to take a tour of the school. That school is a principal's and teachers' delight. In other words, they were not talking about closing down Farragut because they didn't make the grade or the scores. They did. And it's only because of low attendance.
Right.
And so we were just saying, it's sad that we're busing all of our students out of our ward to the county or wherever else, but with the child goes the dollars. And it's sad because, like I said, Farragut has programs in it that are second to none. They just need the publicity and the increase in student attendance. So if the county can increase the attendance of our students in our schools that we still have, I don't know. I don't think they will, or I don't think that might happen.
Okay. I think that was the only question I would have, so thank you for your time and your commitment, not only in the Fourth Ward, but also with possibly the Board of Freeholders, and be sure to give Alderman Moore our best wishes.
I will. I sure will.
Oh,
Thank you.
Okay, Alderwoman Boyd.
And hello, Ms. Evans.
Hi there,
Thanks for
Alderman
coming.
Boyd. Alderwoman Boyd.
Thanks for coming out, and I appreciate your interest in wanting to sit on the board. And so I guess my question is, what role would you think you would play in regards to the city-county piece? What input do you think you would have? Because I I know we as a city are concerned because we don't feel that we need to have it where the county takes over the city. And so what is your views? What do you see? How do you see it would be to benefit the city?
I don't know if it will benefit the city. I look at what the city has to offer, the things that we have control over, the airport, the zoo, other things. We've got the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency coming. So now, why now do they want to join in with us? Whereas all these years before, they didn't. At least to my knowledge. Now, I may be wrong or mistaken, but I don't know. What can they do to help increase the residents of the North Side? What can they bring and give us that will help improve our way of living? I don't know. And as I said, I've been in the city forever, all my life. And I have seen things that have happened where they have dismantled the North Side to the point where it's at today, where it is today. But I don't know, I'm open-minded to see what they have to offer that will help benefit the city.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all.
Okay. Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Hello, thank you for coming out. With a lot of us having busy schedules and it seems like not enough time in the day and we're committed to A, B, C, and D, I would like to know with you too, what motivates you to be on this board? Again, because it does seem like, you know, with everything that we do, it's like one more thing. I read a study, I was listening to a study actually, that said if you wake up at 5 a.m. and go to bed at 9 p.m., you add an extra month to your year. So I've been trying to do that. Yes.
Okay.
Hey, that, I got that.
You got to be old.
Right, I got that down pat.
I started my year off to add an extra month for this year. So what motivates you to be on this board?
What motivates me is that I have a love for the city of St. Louis. And I've been here all my life, and we're overdue. I just want to see the St. Louis area revived. I want to see the St. Louis city turn around. I used to be a carrier. I delivered things, flowers, packages out in Ladue, Clayton, Olivet, University City, Bridgeton, Wellston, Overland, and you get to see how other people live. And I say, I shouldn't have to move out in the county in order to have a safe place to live. Amen. I shouldn't have to live out in the county in order to have a nice place to live. So what we need to do is change individuals' mindsets. Because if you can change that, and do by example to show them that there's another way of doing things to help improve your community and where you live. So that's how I look at it. Hopefully, changing mindsets of people to do better. They say if you know better, you do better. Well, I'm hoping that we can do better for the city of St. Louis.
Thank you. I have no more questions.
Thank you. Alderman Ryan?
Thank you. And Ms. Evans, thank you for coming down today and coming in front of us. I guess I have one additional question for you, other than the three that I've asked everybody.
Okay.
So I know that one of the last times we spoke, and I think one of the first times we met, Alderman Moore he sang your praises, and basically he introduced when he introduced me to you, he said that essentially in the event that he was going to hang up politics, that you were going to be the person that he was really pushing moving forward in the Fourth Ward.
Yeah.
Do you see any sort of potential conflict on the horizon? I know that Alderman Moore hasn't been able to be here. I understand that he hasn't been well lately.
Right.
And I don't know the ins and outs of that, and frankly, it's none of my business, and I certainly don't want to get into it on the public record.
I understand.
But I guess a concern that I have is in the event that that Alderman Moore decided to step away from public service for whatever reason. My understanding is that he would be pushing you pretty hard for his current seat. Do you see any potential conflict in between potentially both serving as an alderman and being on the Board of Freeholders?
My question to you is, would that be conflict of interest? Can you have alder people on the Board of Freeholders?
Well, I think that my understanding at least is that the Constitution is silent to that particular issue. But in terms of the ability to navigate and kind of wheel and deal through the potential process, do you see a potential conflict there?
I don't see a potential conflict. Of course, I'm not an alder person yet, so I don't know what all other things are going to arrive. I've only seen some of the things that in my involvement with Alderman Moore, some of the things that he has come up with. So I'm not sure, and I'm being honest.
Absolutely. No,
I'm not
no.
sure.
Yeah, no, and I respect that, and it's kind of I think it's both a strange question to ask and to answer, so I'm trying to tread quite lightly here.
Okay.
And so I do respect that it is a strange question to answer as well. But it's just something that I had thought about given our past conversation on the issue.
Yeah.
That moving forward, there may be some sort of hitch there, and I don't know what it would look like or if it would happen at all.
Right.
I just didn't know if that had crossed your mind at the moment.
It has crossed my mind, but I knew that if Sharon Tyus was on the board, she would let me know legally whether there's a conflict of interest or whatever, so.
Okay, and thank you for being honest and forthright there. I know it's,
Yeah.
I hesitated to ask the question, and I
Hey, I'm glad you
understand
did, because that was also on my mind. You know, would it be a conflict of interest? And like I said, I know Sharon Tyus would know.
Well, yeah, before we got there, there would certainly be a number of things that would have to happen.
Yes.
None of which has happened at the moment. So
Right.
we're pretty firmly out in hypothetical territory.
Yes.
With it.
Yes.
So now, I guess, on to the same questions that I've asked all the preceding candidates. Have you given any thought to either services or forms of government that might work well combined, whether it's the city becoming a municipality of the county somehow folding back into the city, a borough system, any other kind of outside of the box ideas? Do you have anything that you think may work well, or any services that you think are ripe for some sort of combined government role?
Here again, I'm not quite sure what would work well, whether I don't want to see the city under the auspices of the county. Now, when the county divorced the city back in, what year was that?
I think
18-something.
1867, I think, 1876.
They left. So why should they come back and be in charge over the city? So here again, I'm not really sure, but I have an open mind, willing to listen, but I'm all for the city of St. Louis.
Great. And so then, when we look towards schools, I see that your history kind of is in schools, and you're kind of an interesting candidate here because you're a city resident who taught in a county school.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of interesting because you've straddled that line and you've seen.
Oh, why? Because during that time, during DSEG, the classroom that I was going to be hired for had to be occupied by a white teacher. So I put in an application out in Normandy, and they called me when I was in Texas. They asked me if I wanted a job. I said, I sure do. So that's where I went.
Great. And, I think that's actually a good thing for this particular conversation, because you are a product of city schools and you have the experience of teaching at county schools. So you've kind of seen the tale of two cities that sometimes we talk about when it comes to public education in the St. Louis region. Would you be committed to, in the event of some sort of combination of governments or services, to seeing that education was part of that discussion,
Without a doubt.
particularly in regards to the special school districts and special needs children?
Yes. Yep.
Perfect. And then the last question I have is, as I've pointed out several times earlier, the City of St. Louis has certain protections in place for the LGBTQ population of the city. The county does not have some of those same protections. In the event that the city were to fold into the county, become a municipality of the county, anything like that, would you be committed to fighting to make sure that the LGBTQ community continued to have the protections that are currently in place?
People are people, all people. What's fair for humanity is what I would fight for. And that's how I look at it.
So,
Yes.
okay, sorry, I'm trying to tailor it down a little bit. So yes is the answer there? Okay, Perfect. Well, then, I have nothing further. Thank you for your time today, and thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
You're welcome.
Are there any follow-up questions? Alderwoman Ingracia wanted me to ask some questions, but before I do that, I want to know if anyone had any follow-up questions. Okay, Alderwoman Ingracia is from the 6th Ward, and she wanted me to ask if you had had time to read any of the Ferguson Commission's reports that came out right after the Michael Brown incident.
I did,
Okay,
and I found out that there were a lot of resources that follow the Michael Brown incident, and it's sad that it took something like that to bring to the attention of people of the resources and the plight of people living in poverty. I can't think of what it is, but I know what it is. It's skipping my mind at this time, but it's where cities that had at-risk individuals or families were or had a chance for resources to try and improve themselves. I drive through Ferguson now, and I see a lot of development, a lot of things that have taken place there. And excuse me. It's a lot in the city of St. Louis that could also benefit from some of the resources and programs that they have out in Ferguson. You know, we have people that are, families that are at risk. So what are we doing to help them? What are the resources? I have people coming to my meetings wanting to know, you know, what are the resources that we can get? I'm not poor. In other words, they have things for affordable housing, but they say, well, I don't make a lot of money, but I also am not to the point where I can qualify for the resources. In other words, almost like you have to be dirt poor. So what are the resources for those individuals? That's what they're always asking. And usually there are stipulations. Well, if your income is over this, you can't do it. So you let their homes deteriorate, rot, fall apart, simply because you put stipulations on their income. I don't know if I answered your question or not. What was?
Yes, you did. I understand. We're not Ferguson. We're the city of St. Louis. Do we have to have such an incident before we have some national attention? And it seems like the tail is wagging the dog. I understand exactly what you're talking about. These are Alderwoman Ingracia's questions. She also wanted to know if you had any, they made several suggestions about what should happen not only in Ferguson, but they've been using them in the city of St. Louis about things that should happen. If you had any ideas about those suggestions in the Ferguson Commission as to if you agree, disagree, would you be bringing any of those recommendations to the meetings that we're having with, if you become a member of the Board of Freeholders, would you recommend any of the recommendations from the Ferguson Commission, or, so that was her general idea, because they gave specific incidents of what they wanted to see. You know, a lot of the people about close the workhouse, it's also about bail reform, it's about how police interact with citizens, this is a lot of things. So she just wanted to know if you had any ideas about any of the recommendations in Ferguson Commission.
I know. Could you refresh my memory as to some of those
I
recommendations?
tell you this, I can't refresh your memory on much of anything. I have not eaten today. I have been in meetings since 8 o'clock this morning.
I'm sorry.
My mind is mush. So if that's all right, if you don't have them, because I'm usually a lot sharper, but we've been going I've been in meetings since 8 o'clock. It's 3 o'clock now.
Okay.
So if right now you don't, that's fine.
Okay.
And I'm going to be kind to you because I'm not going to ask you any questions because we still have one more person, okay?
Okay.
So
All right.
that was Ingracias. I've already spoken to you before on many occasions, so I don't need to,
Yeah.
I think the committee has done a good job of asking questions, and they had your application before us. So does anyone else have any other questions?
Okay.
Then I'm going to thank you. If you want to wrap up, you can. If not, you're finished. And I do want to take a 5-minute break just because we've been going from 1 o'clock and it's 3 o'clock. And then we have one other person here today, which is Barbara Martin, which she has arrived. Did you have anything else you needed to tell them?
Nothing other than that
Barbara Martin.
together, meaning the city of St. Louis, we can build a better community and make a difference throughout the city of St. Louis, as well as the county, if we work together. But I don't want to see, it needs to be a win-win situation. I don't want to see the city being left out of what they already have. And that's it. That's it.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. I am always envious of educators because I want to be a teacher. So
Oh,
whenever
you
I've
are a teacher. I don't care what you say.
anytime I've had a chance, I've tried to volunteer at the schools. I built a school in my community, Lexington School. My mother-in-law was a math teacher. My father-in-law was principal of Sumner. And I am always been enamored of
Like I
teachers. I
said,
appreciate what you
you
all do.
are a teacher. When I see you in those alderman meetings and the knowledge that you bestow upon the members, I said, okay. Now, you can claim that you're not a teacher, but I know you are.
Well, thank you very much.
Okay,
Okay.
you're welcome.
And also, you already know, you can go over and get your parking validated, and you're welcome to stay, or you can leave if you have to go.
No sandwich?
No.
I thought you were bringing that. Okay, we're going to take just a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. It's about 5 minutes to 3. We'll meet about 3:03 or so, so I can just go to the restroom, and then we'll be back at it. A little longer than 5 minutes, but we still have one person left, so the Intergovernmental Affairs Committee meeting is called back to order. And there are actually 2 people we need to interview. One we weren't able to get a hold of, so we're going to have to continue this meeting to next week, which we'll talk about that after. We have our last person who is coming before us to testify, Ms. Barbara Martin. If you would come before the committee, please.
Good afternoon,
Okay.
or good evening.
We're almost there.
Barbara Martin is one of the people that we had recommended and got hung up in the previous arrangement that went down there. But we're bringing her before us because we have high hopes that she will be one of the nominees. We're going to have her just tell us a little bit about her. She does come from the First Ward. She is my recommendation. So I guess the press can start saying she's a close ally of Sharon Tyus, because surely none of the people who are associated with me have any of their own brains, okay? Okay, that was, okay, bad Sharon, okay? In fact, all of the people that I'm closely associated with, she's my constituent, have their own brains and are very vocal, and we don't always agree and not on the same page, but I respect our differences. Barbara Martin is a longtime resident in my community, first before when it was the 20th and now the 1st, and I'm proud to present her, and I would ask her to please tell us a little bit about herself.
You said a little bit.
I'll start with you, an educator.
Okay, I'll try to make it fast, but there's a whole lot up here, especially in regards to St. Louis City and County. I was born in 1950, grew up, lived in South City, and then our family migrated to North City. Past Grand Boulevard. We lived on Delmar Boulevard, 4300. I attended not the public schools, but because of a relationship that we had with the Lutheran churches in South City, we were sent to St. Stephen's Lutheran School and Church. So that was my first experience with education. And from there, we transferred to Lutheran High School North, Central, Lutheran High School Central, and then Lutheran High School North, which is where I graduated. After high school, I attended Harris Stowe State College, got my bachelor's degree, and began teaching. I retired from Normandy School District after over 30 years. But in that time, I got married and moved out of the city. I've lived in University City. My family moved from Delmar to University City. So I have that University City experience, which was different from the city of St. Louis. But after getting married, I moved to Ferguson, Missouri. So I have a big chunk of my history in Ferguson. That's where I raised my children. And then moved back into the city, so which is where I am now, living in the First Ward. I am a member of the Urban League Federation of Block Units. I became an officer. And the office that I held was called the Area Council B Chairperson, which means I was over the block units in the 4th Ward, the 1st Ward, the 22nd Ward, and a little slither of the 26th Ward. So that means that I've traveled those wards quite a bit. I think I'll stop there because, like I said, there's a whole lot that I can share with you, but I'll stop there.
I'm sorry. Did you talk about teaching in Normandy? Because okay, because I'm telling you, I'm really, this is all I've had to eat today. Okay.
Oh, gosh.
All right. So we will start with questions. The first question will be the Alderman Gunther.
Thank you, Chairwoman. Thank you very much for being here today. Sorry that you're on the last of the agenda here, but
it's all
it's
right.
great to have you here. So again, like two of our other applicants today with the history in schools, I have a lot of residents, it seems, that in my ward that move there, love the city. As soon as they have children, they have to go to the county for the education. What do you think you can bring to the table as a possible idea of ways to make the city and county's schools more compatible and better competitive for our city students?
Well, I have mixed feelings about what's happening with our schools, city and county. And I have to be very honest with you and tell you that a lot of our woes that we experience come from Jefferson City. Okay, so I think in order for us to address the seriousness of our problems, we have to look towards Jefferson City. But in the meantime, there are things that can be done at our level here, the local level. Our schools in our city have lost and continue to lose funding, the necessary resources, and so that's why our families look at our schools and say, well, you don't have a science lab. Let me go to this county district because they maybe have a science lab or a music, instrumental music classes. And so when we take a look at our schools, we need to look at the resources and why there is such a lack of resources in our city schools. And the funding is totally different when it comes to our county schools. So that's one piece that we need to do. Just stop and take a look at it to see what it is that we can do to address that huge problem. And I think a piece of that has to be looked at are charter schools. How is that affecting the resources from our regular public schools? So that would be one suggestion.
Okay. And then we'll just kind of, you know, with a lot of the other applicants that we've had, we've asked them if they had any, you know, ideas of their own or sort of passions of their own. Obviously, you know, yours is going to be in education, but with the fact that the last time that this Board of Electors had come together, they came up with the MSD as a way to combine services. Do you have any other sort of ideas of what benefits might come out of having this discussion with the Board of Electorates?
I understand, you know, how MSD, you know, came up.
Yeah.
And yes, you're right, education is something that, you know, is dear to my heart, but also housing. Okay. Housing is dear to me, and the reason for that is because I always envisioned a beautiful city. And as I drive our city, I think of those pieces that are missing to create that beautiful city. I saw the decline of St. Louis City. Like I said, as a child, I grew up on Delmar. Those houses along Delmar were great, big, beautiful brick homes, and I remember shopping in Wellston. I remember the hustle and the bustle of businesses along Wellston. And I saw that disappear. And so when I think of housing, I have to think of businesses because our businesses disappeared. And so we've got to attract business.
Okay.
We've got to.
Gotcha. Thank you. No further questions. Again, thank you for being here and for hopefully being a part of the Board of Electors. So,
Thank you.
Okay. The next person, Alderwoman Boyd.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you for being so patient.
I'm fine. I'm retired. That's what they tell me.
You sound like my husband. That's his words. I'm retired. But I am very excited when you talked about the schools. And so that's something that's near and dear to my heart. I'm not an educator, but I always prided myself on ensuring that my kids had the best education possible for them because I knew that once you get your education, nobody can take that from you. And I feel strongly like you, Jefferson City has to understand that, and they have to empower our kids to be able to deal with what's out here in the world. And so I guess my question to you is, I know how the county and the county school systems are running. What do you think we could you could do as a freeholder to help Jefferson City to understand how to incorporate that into the city schools as far as curriculum and being on the competitive edge for county schools?
Well, I'd like to back up just a second, because when I talk about Jefferson City, there are some specific issues that I have coming out of there. In my years of teaching, we started hearing, our schools are failing, our schools are failing, our schools are failing, and that's what would go across the airwaves and on television. And the question I think parents, families should have been asking then, why are you saying that? And the reason for that is called a test. Our children would be given a test, and based on how well they did on this test, would decide the rankings of our school districts, okay? And the first test that, I'm going to take you back to the 80s and maybe before then, was called the MMAT. And our children would take that test every year. And when our school districts began doing quite well with that MMAT, and we teachers stood in the teachers' lounge and said, watch them change the test. Surely, the test changed. It changed to what we call now the MAP. And for teachers, giving students the MAP was quite difficult, because in my teaching, in my learning at Harris Stowe, we were taught you do not teach to a test, not specifically to one test. You have so many other things to teach. But if you're going to teach to a test, you're missing a lot of other skills. And so that's what our school districts started doing, giving us curriculum that would teach to a specific test. I have an example that I can give you. We worked very hard one school year trying to get our children prepared for this test. And we knew that the human systems, body systems, would be a part of the science test. And so we did our best teaching our children about the circulatory system, the respiratory system, all of the systems of the body, and all of the different parts of those systems. And so the test came out, the test day, and the students started taking the test. And what I noticed, all of my students were looking at me, because I had not gotten a chance to actually lay eyes on the test before that day. And so I kind of walked around and looked at what was disturbing them. So instead of that, there was the body there, and instead of that organ here being called a heart, it was called the coronary muscle. Well, we didn't teach our students that term. And so, and that's what I'm saying. You know, when a test comes out and you expect teachers to teach materials, then let us know what we're supposed to be teaching.
To prepare them for.
Exactly. And so our students were struggling passing those tests. And so when the test scores come back and your school district's scores are low, then that must be a bad school district. And so what I think is we need to learn and know what it is that's happening in our schools. Our schools are not failing, but the message is out there.
Thank you.
I hope that example.
It did, it helped.
And it's always from Jefferson City.
You're right.
And when Jefferson City says, you know, teachers, you don't have to worry about teaching cursive this year, or you don't have to worry about teaching timetables
Right.
this year, it's not on the test.
So it's handicapping the teachers.
Yes.
Yes. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
And we teachers are faithful. You know, when the curriculum comes, we're going to stick to that
Right.
curriculum.
Yeah, they are.
Well, everybody except my building in Normandy School District, Bell Ridge Elementary, and I have to toot my horn because we didn't just teach to a test. And in 2005, 2006, State Department came into Normandy School District, evaluated Normandy School District. Bell Ridge Elementary was the blue ribbon school in the entire district. I toot my horn. That was my school.
Thank you very much. That's all I have.
We know how to create excellent schools.
Yeah.
I want you all to notice how she doesn't talk unless I tell her to, so. Okay, the next person is Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming. I have no questions.
Oh, dig deep. Dig.
Actually, you answered what I was going to ask already about schools, so thank you.
Okay. Alderman,
May I throw in another little, I am an,
hear me say that you only talk when I
I'm
ask?
sorry.
See, you're
But
showing
see-
the people that you got your own mind. Yes, ma'am, please.
I'm an advocate for effective schools. I've done the research on that. And so, you know, it doesn't take much to create an effective school.
Alderman Ryan.
Thank you. I'll again go into the same three questions that I've asked the other candidates. Have you given any thought? Do you have any preferences on what may work, what you think is a good idea in terms of either a service that would be good to be combined or what the form of some combined government may look like, whether it's the city becoming a municipality of the county and the city merging somehow, or, you know, some outside of the box idea like a merger like a borough system, in terms of what may be a good outcome from this process?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say, you know, when there's a divorce and when there's a trying to come back together, there have got to be some agreements. That's understood. And if we're talking about what we could look at to bring St. Louis City together with St. Louis County, yes, there are some services that I think could merge. But again, I have mixed feelings about education. You know, how, it's the how. How can we merge our educational systems? How can we merge our police force? It's the how. I think it can be done, but it's the how. And it must be strategic, well thought out.
So you mentioned education and police. Are those two services that you think may be ripe for some sort of combining of governmental resource?
Well, I think that we kind of tried education in the past, called the DSEG program. You know, our young people got on buses and that was merging. And some of our students still attend county schools. But again, I say it's the how. Let's take a look at that. Is it working? How are students faring? Because the merger is there. And as far as, policing, I think that we see some of that. When county police come into city, whether they're supposed to or not, it happens, but it's the how.
Is there anything other than education? You said that you do think that there are some services that would be ripe. What services may those be?
I think even in government. I think that in St. Louis City, we have a mayor. St. Louis County, we have the county executor. I think that we can take a look at that to see if the overall picture can, where we can merge that part of government. I can see that.
Okay.
But again, it's the how.
And then we've spoken quite a bit on schools, and it seems like you would be open to a discussion on the combined, some sort of combination of resources in regards to schools, and would you be taking the special school district and special needs children into account in those discussions?
Sure. For sure.
And then lastly, the city has protections for the LGBTQ community that the county does not currently have. In the event that we were to do some sort of merger of government, particularly one where the city were to fold into the county as a municipality, would you be committed to fighting to ensure that members of the LGBTQ community continued to have those protections in place?
Yes, sir. And my thought on that is, how do you have the right here, and then you step across the line, step across the street, or a boundary, and then that right disappears? And so, to me, it just doesn't make common sense. So, yes.
Sure. Well, thank you so much for coming out and for sticking around through the process here. And
I'm retired.
and I have nothing further, Chairwoman Tice.
Any further questions?
Yeah, I have nothing further.
Okay, I don't even know if I'm going to ask but one or two questions because we debate all the time. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay. Ms. Martin, Ms. Retired. We're all envious.
Yes.
Everybody talks about combining the schools, and you talked about Jefferson City. One of the things that you and I, since we live in the same ward, we happened to be one day at one of the charter schools that's in our community. In the first ward, they closed down all the public schools except for the one that I built, Lexington School, and said we didn't have enough population to supply the schools. And then surprisingly, all those schools opened up as charter schools,
Yes.
which has different standards, and didn't even have to go into the schools that we already had sitting there empty, which to me doesn't make any sense at all, because first of all, you're letting people come in with different standards, and then you're not making use of the school buildings that are sitting in our community, some of them with air conditioning and everything else, but so you just got these big things sitting, big empty buildings. It's very hard as an alderperson to try to get somebody to do something with.
Yes.
So you talked about Jefferson City having an agenda. I know there's some people that approve of charter schools, but in my situation, what I've found out in reading is that mostly the charter schools don't do any better than the public schools. Is that what you understand to be true?
May I expound on that?
Sure.
Okay. After retiring from Normandy School District, I got a call from a teacher friend of mine who asked me to come and work as a part of a team and we were to go into the Paideia Academy charter school. And the State Department was preparing to shut Paideia down. We went into Paideia in October of 2010. And I can tell you, when I first walked into the buildings, there were 2 locations, tears came to my eyes because of what I saw. I saw more students sitting outside the hallways than were sitting in the classrooms. I saw mirrors broken in the girls' bathrooms, mud on the floors, mop buckets with muddy water inside. But the leader of that school was very dedicated, trying to do his best. The teachers were trying to do their best. And once our team got in there, we found that they had their procedures and their policies were all scrambled and just kind of mishmashed. So we worked with the staff to create systems for them. And the school began to run smoothly, but by that time, the State Department had made a decision to shut it down. So that was one building. The school down the street from my house was Imagine School. I often visited Imagine School because I had relatives that attended that school. It shut down. And so just, all over, my question was, well, when the charter schools receive this funding and then it fails, what about the funding? Because that funding comes from regular public school funding and the money is just zapped and gone. And so that's why I have mixed feelings about these places called charter schools. I know that there must be some charter schools that are excellent, but I'm having a real problem with charter schools coming into our communities, setting up, not held under the same standards as regular public schools. And then when the money, when they fail, and you're right, when you look at the data, those test scores are not any better than regular public schools. That's all we have to do is just take a look. State Department has it posted. Just look at the data. And so we have to, again, teach so that people can learn the truths. So yes, you're right. I could even see if they would use the buildings that we already have there, but it's not happening.
And one of the things that we look at in people sometimes rush to do things and then take a second and third look. While I was off the Board of Aldermen, they passed ordinance and got voted on by the voters that we reduced from 28 to 14. It was a very poorly written ordinance that now some of the people who support it now go, wow, okay. One of the things they talked about was we were going to save money. When you go from 28 to 14, you then become the size of a legislative district. Every legislator has one thing, an aide, assistant, a paid assistant. So when you go to this size, if you hire an assistant, because you're going to need one, you're not going to save any money right there. That's the end of the money you talked about, because now you're going to be paying an assistant. There are other things they didn't think about. And so now I'm having discussions with the alder people, because the people who were supporting us, like, I didn't think about that. In our ward, we put out something saying it was not a good idea, not based on I was going to be back here at that time, based on I knew that was not a good idea for the city of St. Louis. And I always use classrooms as an example. I have never heard a teacher tell me, I need to double the size of my classroom. Okay, and so that's what I look at with wards. When you have people who need you and have to call you for a lot of access for different services that they don't know about, the larger you make something, the harder it is to service. If you got a ward, everybody's educated and they on all the devices and they know where all the services are, and the city is providing those services, that's a great thing. But for when you have low to moderate income, you have poor people, even elderly who are not on all those devices, you filled a lot of questions, which I do. Sometimes, like, what's such and such's number? I still have to call Mrs. Jones back to tell her Congressman Clay's number is this or whatever, because we don't have any assistance here on the Board of Aldermen. So I want to just say to you, it's more a statement. I know your propensity for sitting back and looking and trying to gather information. You don't have to know everything about city government, but I do want to say that if you become a member of the Board of Freeholders, I want you to keep that propensity to sit back, ask questions, I know you're not easily convinced of things. You and I have had long conversations, and I like that. Most of my friends are not people who say yes to me, contrary to what they put in the press. My friends and I have you know that, okay? You've been my constituent, and I consider you a friend. If you become a member, I just want you to take that into account, that there will be people that with law degrees and everything else, but they don't necessarily know the city any better than you. You know it from a citizen's point of view, of the services you should have versus the services you don't have, of trying to get things done. It takes for years, from an education standpoint, from living in the county and the city, and then moving back into the city, from being a mother, a teacher. There's a lot of things that you bring to the table. One of the things we pushed why we wanted inclusion, we pushed to have 3 people north of Page, because the people who live south of Page don't know the things that we have to just fight for, to have a grocery store, to have a Walgreens, a hardware store, a sit-down restaurant. These are things that when I lived on the other side of Page, and especially Del Mar, because I've lived in the Central Quarter in South St. Louis, I took those things for granted.
Yes.
It was only when I moved north of Page that I went, wow, okay, as soon as I got there, you don't have this. And since I've lived there 30 years, a lot of our things have shut down. Not necessarily, we've been very lucky in our ward, or you got a big pig-headed alderwoman who's just never given up, okay? But grocery stores are closing down, so we have the last major grocery store in our community.
Yes.
Banks have shut down. We got a Walgreens, we got a bank and a credit union. But this is the things that I'm looking for. Some people would be looking for other things, but what I'm looking for is that everyday citizens experience. And when they say, oh, this is a great idea to put the trash service together, I want you to be able to say, well, wait a minute, just what you said, how is that going to work? Because we're already having trouble over here getting our trash services. In fact, until I came in and was the chair of public employees, we got the leftover drivers and the leftover trucks. Okay, and that's the kind of things that when people don't live in your community, they take that for granted. They think that's okay. Oh, okay. We have a policy with the city of St. Louis where the senior truck drivers get to pick their trucks, and then they get to pick their routes, and they all picked South St. Louis. So that nobody said, well, dang, everybody in North St. Louis who pay their taxes, they don't have any new trucks, and they don't have any experienced drivers, okay? So the experience that you bring living north of Page is what we were fighting for, okay? And so I appreciate that you're retired and you could go and sit down and not care about that. And I appreciate you taking the time to sit through all of this. So mine was much more a statement to make people understand why it's important to have diversity in all different kinds, from having women to men to different races to ethnic groups to sexuality. That brings a different perspective for everybody. By me living in 3 parts of the city, my perspective was and then not even coming from St. Louis, very different depending on,
Yes.
I lived along the Kings Highway border, okay? I've lived from South Kings Highway to Central Kings Highway to North Kings. Well, actually, Kings Highway Memorial Boulevard, because that is the correct name. Everybody calls it North Kings Highway, but that part that has the median from Martin Luther King to West Florissant is Kings Highway Memorial Boulevard. I appreciate it. You're the last person we're going to hear today. You can get your parking validated.
Okay.
And if no one has any more questions, this will be the end.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. I appreciate
Aw,
it. Okay.
and thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Enjoy your retirement.
On the Board of Freeholders. Okay, just a little housekeeping. We are not going to, we're going to just recess and pick back up when we can get the last person in here that we need to talk to right now. one of our members is not available to be here, with at least two, but one is sick. But Alderman Collins Muhammad is out of town, and he will be back. Let me get my calendar up here so I can. So he's going to be back Tuesday. So we talked about continuing this meeting to Wednesday. Is that right?
Mm-hmm.
And that is the 26th? What? Yeah, this is the 19th. At 2? Did we say 2? Is that okay with everyone? So before we recess, I want to keep this matter tabled for a reason that we've gotten really far today, and we're almost to the finish line. And so I would like to entertain a motion that we table this matter of the mayor's nomination, which we will open back up next Wednesday, and hopefully we will be able to take a vote at that time.
So moved.
Table? Table.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion that we table, we retable the mayor's nomination to the Board of Freeholders in that whole matter, and we have a second. I know there's going to be an objection to previous roll, so we're not going to do it. So will you call the roll, please?
Alderwoman Tyus.
Aye.
Alderman Muhammad. Alderman Gunther.
Aye.
Alderwoman Boyd.
Aye.
Alderwoman Middlebrook.
Aye.
Alderman Narayan.
No.
Chairman Moore. 4 aye votes and, 4 aye votes and 1 no vote.
By your vote, we passed the motion, so this this matter is tabled until we meet again on Wednesday, February 26th at 2 p.m., and we are recessed until that time.
All righty.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. We appreciate it.
Good job.